All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am super excited to introduce Alissa, who's going to be sharing a little bit more about her journey in science communication and public programs and all the wonderful work that she is doing in the New York area. So, more specifically, Alissa has a background in counseling and research and evaluation with over 12 years of experience. She pursued her undergrad at Brown University, where she studied psychology and Africana studies, and as well followed by a master's degrees in rehabilitation counseling and counseling psychology from George Washington University and the University of Maryland, and currently serves as the director of public programs at Columbia University's Zuckerman Institute, which is a really wonderful hub for neuroscience research and community engagement as well. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that today. And a really cool fun fact, Alissa is a retired baker and former owner of Born Bread, which was her own dessert company. And she was focusing on infusing mindful baking practices into her work and hosting really cool workshops too. So listen, if we have time, would also love to hear more
Oh,
about what that was
absolutely.
like. And I will pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really glad to be here and share more of my journey with everyone. As the first slide says, it's never a straight line, and all of the things that were shared about my background kind of lead to or emphasize that. And so one of the things that I guess I want to start with is when I was a child, one of the things that was instilled in me was to get a sense of my values. And that was a critical lesson for me because I learned that that was something that was going to guide me through my entire life journey and could help center me when I became confused or sad or even excited. You always want to check in with your values, even when things are going well. And so, what I placed here on this slide are my values: community, access, equity, ease. Which I want to really say that and slow down and say ease and explain a little bit more about that in a moment, and creativity. And so I remember, being in high school and, people ask you the wonderful question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, all I want to do is make programs for the community. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even realize that that was something I wanted to do until I really engaged more in community service. But it was a little bit of a check in with myself because I was involved in so many programs. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I am in my family makeup was a single parent household with my mom. I lived with my mom, my sister, and my grandmother, so it was a multi-generational household. And I was in a lot of programs because of that. My mom had to work a lot. And because of that, she didn't want her kids at home alone in the evening. So I was in after school programs, programs on the weekends, summer programs, just lots of programs. And I felt that these programs were almost a way for me to have a new experience right in my own community. I almost felt like I was traveling somewhere, and I thought that that was amazing because they were mostly free, and that was just something that was a bonus. So that was important to me because it was something that allowed me to experience different things, changed my perspective. I interacted with a lot of different people that I probably would not have if I weren't in these programs. And I thought it was giving, honoring that part of me to do that as something in my professional life. And I just also enjoyed the experience, but also how people received it. So that was important to me. And because building programs for the community, involves parts of access and equity, it definitely served the values that I felt were very important to me. So, as I moved into education and other experiences, I had to check in with myself with these values. In high school, I was involved in a lot of community service. Like I mentioned before, I even was voted most likely to get involved, which was my high school superlative, which I don't know how to take that because usually they're like funny and, cool. And that one was just like me. So, but they were spot on. I was involved in a lot of activities. And then I went on to college and I've tried to get a sense of, how can I use this drive to want to develop programs for the community to find a major. And it felt like a surprise for me to land in psychology, but I always wanted to be in a helping profession also. And even if I didn't end up being a psychologist, I told myself, was I felt like if I learned and understood human behavior, then I could create and design experiences for people to meet them exactly where they are in development. And so, also being fascinated with human behavior was the driving force with that. So, of course, I went on to grad school. I studied rehabilitation counseling at the George Washington University, and then I went on to a doctorate at the University of Maryland, and I dropped out of that program pretty much in my dissertation phase, which was very surprising for a lot of people. But I knew that that was not the path for me. And as much as I wanted to finish and be successful, and not disappoint everyone who was excited for me and also myself, I felt like the biggest gift to myself was to be honest and to move in the direction of what I was passionate about and not just do something because everybody expected me to. So I left that program with all the knowledge it gave me, and I moved back to New York and I started pursuing jobs in programs. So I started working at Columbia for about 3 years, and I worked in a an organization called Community Impact. It was an organization that served the community in different ways. I was a youth programs manager, so I've mostly worked with youth programming. Usually, youth programming is centered around educational enrichment. So that was something that kind of anchored me in programs. And I realized that as much as I love programs, as much as I love helping youth and families, I also want to do more with programs. But I just really didn't know the name. And that's what I struggled with. It's like, what is this thing called? I I ran into a lot of different um, people, and it all centered around like pre-college programs and educational enrichment programs for youth, and I knew there was much more out there. So I then looked at people in spaces of philanthropy and community engagement in different ways to see what were their jobs called. How would I even search for a job if I didn't know the name of it? So I landed in the social corporate responsibility space, which was not really what I wanted, but it started to give me the language of how to search for what I wanted. I also am a patronizer of public programs myself. I go to museums. They have like things like in New York at the Brooklyn Museum, they have first Saturdays at the Brooklyn Museum. It's an open day for the museum. You come in, they have, art showcases, they have bands, they have other um, displays of creativity there, and it's open to the public. So I started to think like, I think this is kind of what it is. So who does this? Like, what is this called? And then finally, I met someone who shared with me that these are all public programs. Like all of the things that we experience for free in the community are public programs. And I'm just like, wow, that's incredible. No one really knows what this is called, but it's such a simple, it seems so simple. So that is how I ended up in this space. I started to look for jobs in public programs, and I was disappointed because public programs is a very small area and people are starting to name them. So I want to back up a little bit before I start talking about what I do now and what we do here at Zuckerman, because all of the parts of my journey, um, I really want to emphasize the statement at the bottom, which is honor the messages you tell yourself. because I had to go back to that 15, 16-year-old person, me, and remember that I said that all I wanted to do was make programs for the community. So when I got to my dissertation in grad school and I'm struggling to just complete it and be excited about it, I had to remind myself that I said, all I want to do is make programs for the community. Is this going to get me there? And if it's not, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? And so all of those questions, I think, are questions to ask yourself when you're journeying through your academia or just your path with your career. So moving forward, it, as much as it was not easy to figure out, I had tons of jobs. I'm skipping a little bit, but I've had a lot of jobs, and they've kind of all built on each other, giving me experience in grant writing, in program development, really just checking in with the needs of an organization and seeing what they need, and also seeing who they serve and what their audience needs, and trying to develop something that serves both. So the psychology really did help in those spaces. And I was fortunate enough to um, know someone at Columbia when I was working there the first time, who was very interested in me returning. And so once she saw a position for a public programs manager at the Zuckerman Institute, she alerted me to the position, and then I applied and ultimately got the job. So I'll move forward a bit to discuss more of what we do now at the Zuckerman Institute with public programs. So we really do engage the public with science through community-based collaborations. And this is exactly what I wanted to do. I was so excited because and for me, and I know this is, a scientific audience, but science is a flexible word in that sentence. I really just wanted to engage the public with something through community-based collaborations, because the experience of people engaging in something different and new and enhancing their curiosity around a subject is really what is exciting to me. And I just so happen to be in an environment that centers science, which is super exciting because I'm not a scientist, and I get to be stimulated intellectually every single day. And I see how important, engaging science with marginalized communities or historically minoritized communities, how important that is, and how important it is to demystify certain subjects and disciplines so people can really feel like they're having a full human experience. And one of the things that I'm learning, and I knew, but I'm really seeing it play out here, is how much, neuroscience and brain science controls everything that we do. So engaging with it is important because we are humans and we're having a human experience. So here at the Zuckerman Institute with our public programs, we engage the community in a variety of ways. This may look very confusing, but I'll break it down for you in terms of how we determine our engagement with the local community. So we determine our engagement by trying to have a variety of ways of engagement, from low barrier to high barrier programs. And it's important to understand that that is something that can capture a larger amount of people, because you have programs that require applications, require a longer amount of time in the program. You're only going to get a certain type of person. Everyone is not able to write an application. Everyone is not able to stay in your program for months and months and months. So how can you engage other people? And all of this didn't happen at the same time. These things were built on each other. So when thinking about the notion of engagement, you can start with one, but always ask yourself the question, who's missing? And that's how we arrived at these other levels. We have programs that are walk-in, no registration needed, and we have programs that are application required and high commitment. We also serve a wide variety of participants. We have from young children all the way down to older adults, and also the type of person. Are they science, interested? Are they science naive? And the type of audience will determine what the engagement is. And I'll go into and describe some of these. What I did was I pulled out a couple of our programs and I'll explain them in more detail. But what we like to share with people is that we have an ecosystem of programs. So that previous slide that showed you the barriers and listed all of the different types of people that we engage, this is how it gets actualized. We have programs like Saturday Science that's happening right now downstairs with children and their families, and that's walk-in. That is, very science. It's science, and it's what I don't want to call it science light, but it's science light because it's so interactive and it's not like a lecture. But there are interactive stations for students to engage in. And then we have other programs like Brainiac or Teacher Scholar that is more of a high barrier because of the nature of the program being longer and also requiring an application. And it's only open to a very specific demographic of people, teachers or high school students of a certain age. The others, we partner with local community in more unique ways with some of our arts and science collaborations, and that's how we engage local artists. We also widen our focus to not just neuroscience, and we also engage people around other STEM subjects. And so it's a way to just get people to start to think about science in a different way, but always relating it back to a human experience. So some of the topics could be why do we experience chills when we hear a song we like? That's something that we may all connect around and we don't understand like why this happens. And then a scientist will explain that to you paired with music and entertainment. And so there will be a musician actually playing something so that you can maybe experience that musical chills. And then the scientist will explain the brain science around it. So those are the examples. And then to just dive in a little bit more, this is more of a snapshot of one of our programs that is focused on mentored research experiences for high school students. This one is a high barrier program. As you can see, it has a longer duration of being in the program, about 8 months, and requires a lot of different steps along the way. But the program goals are laid out very clearly, and the program has a very rigid structure. But it's very engaging, and it's also very high level in terms of how students are expected to engage with their mentees, their mentors, and also the institute itself. So this program is called Brainiac, and it's an acronym that stands for a lot of things, but it's called Brainiac. But it is something that it's actually one of our first programs, and then we built other programs based on the fact that this was a high barrier program and we needed to engage other people. The next one is one of our arts and science collaborations, Breakout Science, what I talked about a moment ago with the music and science pairing. This one is where we partner with local community-based organizations in a very intentional way. And we try to create this genuine collaboration where the content is co-owned by both the Zuckerman Institute and the community-based organization, in that we develop the experience together. And so I work with scientists and non-scientists on my team. So there's space for a lot of different types of thinkers and people with different experiences in order to create these public programs. I have two people who have PhDs in biology on our team. And then I have someone else who is more of a seasoned program manager on my team too. And the combination of all of those people, we get these programs. You know, these are programs that we developed. The only program that was here before I started was Brainiac and Teacher Scholar. Everything else came out of conversations with my team, conversations with the local community, and really getting a sense of what people want and need. And so this is why this whole idea of genuine collaboration is important because, you know, we are building the things we want to see right now. We're also building the things that people need. And if no one needs it, then we shouldn't do it. And that's very important. We always have to check in with our audience. And just because someone has a good idea doesn't mean that it should be executed. And that's one of the most important things about public programs. They truly serve the public, and you take a discipline that is maybe something that is inaccessible, like science and also like art. Because as you know, living in New York City, art and cultural experiences are very expensive. And they tend to have this tone of exclusivity. And if we can, you know, tear down some of the barriers to that, then perhaps we can create an environment where people can have curiosity, have motivation, and move their station in life. So I'm going to go to the next slide just to show a couple of cool photos that are products of some of the programs that we've executed. So this is a mural that was in our lobby for quite some time, and it was also in our education lab space, which is our public space in the Zuckerman Institute, where we execute many of these programs. And one of the programs that we developed was called, or is called, Art in the Education Lab. The Zuckerman Institute is a glass building, see right through it. And it's really pretty, but it's a little sterile at times. And we would love to make it beautiful and to create a sense of accessibility for the local community. And the lobby is open to the public, and so is the education lab. So we figured, why not put art in it? And in order to put art in the education lab, why don't we commission a local artist from the Harlem community to create art for the space? So what we did here was we, we put out a call for artists, and the call included the artist having an interest or curiosity in science as well, that would be nurtured by conversations with scientists at the Zuckerman Institute. And then those conversations would hopefully lead to inspiration, and then an art piece would be developed. And so this artist that we chose is a graffiti artist, as you can see. He's from Washington Heights. His name is Dister Rondon, and he created a mural that was 4 panels, double-sided. One side had featured faces of scientists and things that were important to their research, who he interviewed. And the other side was more of a community display. The person featured here next to my face with the mask on it, her name is Latasha Wright, and she is the chief scientific officer of a nonprofit organization called BioBus, who we collaborate on programs with. And the other parts of it are, you know, children doing science. Latasha also is part of this organization called Story Collider, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on sharing science, sharing stories that are rooted in science, and sharing stories of people that are in science. And she is a part of that. So there's one area where you see she's in front of a microphone. And so that is the mural that we commissioned. And that was part of one of our programs, which is, I think, really cool. This other one that I'm actually going to play is about, I think it's like 2.5 minutes long. It's a digital piece that was also from our Art in the Education Lab commission. So the artist has synesthesia, and she created a piece that kind of was it's a sensory experience. I should just say that. So I'm going to play it and hopefully you enjoy it. And then I guess that will conclude my talk. Thank you. Hope everyone enjoyed that.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. That was such a wonderful presentation and I think very heartwarming too, because as you alluded to, this audience is mostly of folks who may consider themselves a scientist or aspiring scientist, but to also very much think about the bidirectionality between our communities. I think that's so important. And I'm so glad that we could have you join us and take time out of your schedule to come and chat with us about
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you emphasized the bidirectionality because that is something that we almost sometimes we forget. You know, programs and the program space can feel transactional at times, and we have to remember that that's not what we're here to do. You know, we never want to come across as the authority of anything. If anything, it's the community that tells us what we need and or what they need, and then we try to meet that. And we always check in to see, did we get it right? If not, let's try again. Let's involve community members in the development of these types of experiences, and let's also host them in community spaces as much as possible. So yeah,
absolutely. And that it's not a one size fits all approach to doing it.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
why the scaling is so important, you know, trying to see who's missing. Even if we do interact with certain groups, how are we interacting with them? Is it something that we interact with them in different ways? Things like that are questions that we ask ourselves.
Right. Well, friends in our audience, if you have any questions for Alyssa, I invite you all to raise a digital hand on Zoom and you can unmute and ask directly. Or if you want to drop a question in the chat, I'm happy to be your voice and ask the question out loud too. And I suppose for our first question, Alyssa, because our community is one that's many students, trainees, and early career folks, how do you really see this up and coming next generation being more involved in the public and community engagement space? And what are maybe things that um, all of these folks should be mindful of as we're proceeding through our ongoing training?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's important to always keep in mind is the communication piece. Science communications is something that we do focus on. And of course, this whole department, public programs, can be, described as a way of communicating science, which it is. But one of the things that I noticed is that we all need to practice. And so what we do with our some of our high school student interns, we provide them with an experience of from an improv group where they come in and they help them with just communication in general. So if there's a way for you to engage in some sort of science communications or communications as a hobby or as, you know, professional development, I think that is very important. I also think the notion of storytelling has become um, incredibly important. I mean, I think storytelling is, it's as old as we are, as old as the earth is, but to hone in and actually create space for stories to be told, I think that's important to do. And not just to tell your own stories, but to listen to others and to put yourself in spaces where you can listen to other people tell stories. That is something that will help inform and guide you as you navigate, any aspect of your career. And just I one of the other things that I think is important is to hone in on some of the, I guess, soft skills that might be overlooked at times, and the way we interact with each other, um, putting yourself in situations that might feel like they're outside of your comfort zone. And that may be cliche to say, but I'm finding that more and more of our students are in need of, you know, um, support with the softer skills, the communication, the, interviewing skills, the networking, like how do you even network? That's something that I get asked a lot. And I'm just like, just go out. And I'm like, that's not the answer. Don't, yes, just go out. But also there's a way to navigate networking that doesn't feel so awkward. And figuring out how you can strategize that aspect of your career is important to do. One of the things I did was I started asking people like their titles, like what is your title, like how did you get that title, what does that mean, because sometimes people just make things up and it does has nothing to do with the job. Such a frustrating thing. But start to kind of be nosy. People want to share their journeys with you. People want to share how they are in a thing. So position yourself to find that type of mentoring. It doesn't have to be a permanent mentor, but just it can be, a temporary mentor like experience for you. I hope I answered your question. I feel like I forgot it halfway across.
That was perfect. Now, these are some really great points. Thank you. And there are a couple of questions from folks who are interested in the New York, New Jersey area. You had earlier alluded to some programs that you had been involved in when you were a youth and a little younger in your career or earlier in your career. Any of those existing New York, New Jersey programs you recommend? And the second part of that question is also, we have folks outside of the Northeast who are interested in learning if there are any programs potentially through the Zuckerman or other nonprofit partners that they could potentially get involved into.
So, for the first question, the programs that I was in as a child, I'm 100 years old, so I don't think that many of them exist in the same way. But I will say that, one of the programs that I got into was like a youth opportunity program for middle schoolers that kind of like placed me in a high school, and that was an experience that opened a lot of doors for me, and also made it clear how important community service was. So I would say that programs that have an interdisciplinary nature to them are programs that you should look for. It's great to kind of focus on one thing, but also try to see if you can focus on many things, because I noticed that especially high school students, they're very overcommitted with a lot of different things. And if you can find experiences that allow you to have a variety to experience instead of just one thing, then I think that that's a great, that's something to look for. Um, but in general, the programs that I was in were very like small and grassroots programs, focusing on one focused on trying to give young girls different experiences in science and in like the athletic world. So it was one of those where you can kind of choose from week to week what kind of experience you wanted. So that was that. So that's why I say like trying to find something interdisciplinary is really helpful, because when you're younger, you really don't know what you like until you experience it. So trying a lot of different things is helpful. Um, and then in terms of, how to develop programs in other places or to be engaged in programs here, if you're living outside of New York, especially if you live outside of the United States, I think one of the ways that we could likely interact is with our breakout science program, where we do engage speakers. Now it does require you to have an understanding of research that you can share out. Otherwise, we do invite people to, connect with us to explore what our program models are, if you'd like to replicate it somewhere in your local community, because there's always something that can be developed. I created in high school, this is probably why I was voted most likely to get involved, but a talent show for the kids across the street, the elementary school students that were across the street from my high school. I used to go and like read to them, as I was like a tutor or something like that in my free periods. And then I noticed, I was like, you know what, all these kids want to do something after school and they don't have anything here. And we're across the street. I went to a private school on the Upper West Side, and we have a lot of resources. Why don't we just bring the kids over and like do something with them? And I wouldn't encourage that, because you should be 18 years old at least if you're in the United States, and also you should get permission. But we didn't get permission. We asked for forgiveness, but it still worked out. We got the kids to come across the street, and then we put a talent show together for them, because all they wanted to do was like sing and, showcase a talent and then get like a trophy and do it in front of their friends and family. And that was something that occupied their time and allowed creative expression. It showed them that, hey, this is a space across the street that's accessible to you, that you probably didn't even know what it was before you came over here. And there are students that look just like you in this space going to high school, and you can do all of these wonderful things. And so sometimes it just is like looking around and saying, what is missing here? Like, what do people need? How do I have any skills that can serve that need? And if you do, then I say do. But if you don't, maybe you can connect with others. One of the other things that I love to do in this space is, I don't have all the skills. I'm not a scientist, but I'm a connector of things. I'll find the scientists, I'll find the artists, I'll find the people to put them together, just based off of, noticing a need. So I would say that. And I'm always open to people connecting with me to kind of explore things on a more individual basis, because I know sometimes we do have some limiting factors in terms of, inviting others in to participate in our programs and support them too.
Great to hear. And let's see, another question here is about looking more outside of the US too, and building programs across the world in the global South. And especially because, again, that one size fits all doesn't translate. Each community is different. And how do we really make community engagement happen in resource limited settings? And especially when there maybe is perhaps even concerns about career stability for opportunities in science communication, public engagement, compared to perhaps more traditional academia science research routes. Any potential thoughts you have or suggestions you have for trainees in the global south who might be interested in picking up that more that way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that can be hard to accept is that proof of concept is something that we may have to start to do more of, show that it can be done and start to approach doing it. And then people will say, hey, this is amazing. We need to put more funding around this. We need to put more energy around this. One of the and it takes time. It does take a good amount of time. But one of the things that I noticed in this space is that there are people who are interested in doing what you want to do. There's just no one is giving that a voice. So if you are passionate about something happening, building a program or, filling a void in some way, start to develop that out. Start to develop that idea, put pen to paper, start to share it with other people. Oftentimes we keep things so, close to our heart and so secretive, but start to say it, because people may be thinking about it too. We have, for example, we have a lot of like spaces here at Manhattanville campus that are going to be developed into more buildings. And one of the things I said was, we should get a garden. Like we should do like a community garden or something. We're in Harlem, where we have all the space here. We need to engage the community in different ways. Maybe food justice is a thing. There's like no grocery stores around here. At least if there are, they're not grocery stores that have, quality products at good prices. So, having a garden would be amazing. And I just started saying that out loud because I was just so frustrated with the landscape here. And so many people are excited about it. And I even got the attention of a faculty member who's in the engineering department who also is interested in urban farming. And so just by just saying it out loud and not keeping it a secret because I'm worried that, oh, well, people may not like this. And what are people going to think about my idea? They may hate it. Just say it, and people may gravitate toward it. And now someone who is actually in a position of power, who is also on board and aligned with me now, we can work together to actually make this happen. So I think that's one of the things. And again, it's proof of concept. It's not something that I think that people are, have plans for anyway, but it's something that we're going to probably have to build or and propose and gain more excitement around, and then it will happen. So there are always other people that are excited about the same thing you are. It's just a matter of being confident enough to voice it.
That's nice. And I know we are approaching time here, but as a last final question, thinking about how in today's climate, political climate especially, unfortunately, we see a lot of misinformation out there or pseudoscientific beliefs that have been pushed forward by certain individuals. And what are your thoughts on the best ways in which we can, of course, address misinformation at its roots, but without also disrespecting people's beliefs and also taking into mind potential stigmas or if there are any cultural factors that may pose some barriers in our work when engaging with communities?
Absolutely. So yeah, we definitely encountered a lot of this during the pandemic. Um, and that it was when we ramped up our programming around, having these art and science collaborations because we felt the need to really make people feel comfortable with science and not in a way that made them feel judged or made to feel like they shouldn't be engaging with this because they had some other idea that was not necessarily the correct or had the most information backing it up. So I think it's really just confronting people with the truth in a way that is digestible. We do these arts and science collaborations because people find art comforting. They find art accessible to the degree that it exists in their life. So when people say art, they're like, oh, you think a gallery and an opera or something like that. But also it could be just you singing in the shower, or you picking up a piece of paper and doodling. I mean, a pen or a piece of paper and doodling. And so we presented information in a way that was most comforting and digestible to people in their homes. And we still are do hybrid events where we make sure that it's accessible to people. And so once we started saying, oh, we're going to have, share music with people, we're going to share dance with people, and also just give you a little bit of science, it became a way for people to become curious. And once you tap into people's own natural curiosity, that's when you have them on the hook, and that's when you can start to share more of the truth about whatever the information or whatever the subject is that you're trying to convey. And that's why I say that that word at the beginning, science, or the sentence in the beginning, science, is interchangeable, because whatever it is, as long as you tap into people's basic curiosities, you can then try to share more information with them that would have been difficult if you were just debating. So that is, I think that's important to do. It's about making people curious, and also asking more questions too, and not in a way that feels judgmental. Well, why do you think that? Why? But it's more like, you explain it to me, and then I'll explain to you what I know. And then perhaps we can start to figure out where the truth is. And that is, I think that's one of the most important things, to really honor the other person's experience and to make sure that they feel heard, and then also invite them to listen to you in the same way. But the curiosity piece has been successful for us with programs.
I love that. Curiosity as the heart of it all. And then going
Mhm,
from there, building
mhm,
from there. That's
mhm.
wonderful to hear. Well, Alissa, again, thank you so much for your time on a weekend. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it
No
here.
problem. Good luck with
And
the rest of your conference. I hope everyone's
appreciate it. Thank
excited.
you. We do have some folks who's some of them private messaged me questions, so they still had we didn't have the chance to get to those. But if people can potentially reach out to you, what would be the best route to
Mhm.
get in touch?
Yeah, you can share my Columbia email with people. That would be great.
I will drop that in the chat.
Yes. I'm happy to respond to those questions that we didn't get to in general. And also, if people want to email me, I'm happy to respond and share them with you. And then also, I can receive emails and reply individually.
That sounds great.